The Falcons offense wants to pound the rock against the Packers in week 2, but to do so, will the offensive line start earning their checks?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. All you got to do is download the app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And guys, if you don't know me, I'm Aaron Freeman, your very the most humble host ever that has existed. You might also know me as Sirius Black and Mr. Drew. And today, I am joined by none other than the other humble host here on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, co-host of ATL Day Ones. That is none other than Jarvis Davis. And we always appreciate each and every one of you guys that are everydayers out here that make Locked On Falcons and Locked On Sports Atlanta your first listen each and every day. And if you want to become an everydayer, all you got to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So Jarvis and I, as usual, to wrap up the end of the week, and we'll see how quickly this show goes off the rails as usual on these Thursday night, Friday episodes. But we always talk keys to victory for the upcoming Week 2 matchup. Of course, you guys know Jarvis and I do the postcast. Hopefully we'll be joined this week by a third party. All right. You might know that person. We'll see. But
Beloved. It was called Beloved right now.
But Jarvis, let's talk about this Week 2 matchup between the Falcons and Packers, and always start the conversation. For you, what is the biggest key to victory for the Falcons?
I think it has to be running the football, right? Remember who you are. Know who you are. Like, your identity is you want to be able to run the football, and you drafted, Mr. Walk on Water into wine himself. Make sure you continue to be who you are. And on the defensive side of the football, I think that's going to be the main thing, right? Like, they need to reveal who Jordan Love really is, right? Because we talked about on my show earlier about just, I don't know if I'm necessarily believing what I saw in that first game, against the Chicago Bears, because, like you said, it's all about perspective after week 1, right? Okay, where do you fall? Like, how far are you going to fall from being one of the highest rated quarterbacks in the NFL? Is Jordan Love going to stay there? I can probably say it's safe to say that's probably not going to happen. So I think Ryan Nielsen needs to give us a peek into who Jordan Love really is, and I think that's going to be by speeding that clock up, putting a little heat on him, because you can't wait till the second half to make those adjustments to start moving your defensive linemen around and start sending pressure from different levels, because you're in a tight game with a rookie quarterback. It seems like Jordan Love got a pretty good handle on what he's doing in Green Bay, so I think, defensively, Ryan Nielsen going to have to heat him up, and then Arthur Smith is just going to have to, hey, we're going to run the football, and we're going to play off of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jarvis. As you mentioned earlier on ATL Day Ones, we talked a little bit about it, and I kind of compared Jordan Love to Jimmy G, and how, you don't look at Jimmy G as the guy that's like operating the engine of that offense. Is really Kyle Shanahan. He's just kind of the guy that's behind the wheel. And I felt like that's kind of what Jordan Love is in Green Bay. But I think Matt LaFleur showed, that he can operate that engine pretty well. And Jordan Love showed he could absolutely steer that in the directions that they want to go. And so it'll be up to, I think, this Falcons defense. And I think this is going to be an interesting battle for the Falcons. And I'm sure today, tomorrow, one of these days, something I wrote for the Falcoholic will be touching upon kind of the formula for the Falcons' ability to beat the Packers, and a lot of that breaks down the defense. And you're talking about it, getting pressure on Jordan Love, being able to be a little bit more aggressive, blitzing him as one of the ways. And I agree with you, running the football, right? And that formula is based off of the last time a Ryan Nielsen coached team, which is Saints, back in week 1 of 2021, played the Packers, and they beat the brakes off the Packers 38-3. And they did it running the football. They controlled the clock. I think they possessed the ball 22 minutes out of the first 30 minutes of the game, and they ran for 140 yards in the first half. And that was because, it was Jameis Winston at quarterback for the Saints, and they didn't have Michael Thomas because he missed that whole season. And they knew that we don't want to get into a shootout with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and those guys. And obviously, I don't think Jordan Love's on that level. I don't think the Packers have a receiver on that level. But as you said, I don't think the Falcons, even though, again, they do have weapons, I don't think the Falcons are built to be a team that's going to try to win a shootout. And, as I told you earlier, I feel like maybe later this season, the Falcons might be able to do that. But I don't think right now at this stage, they want to get into that sort of game. And I think with Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur calling the offense, if it gets into a shootout, not because Jordan Love is this great quarterback, but I just think right now that offense has shown that they know how to put up points, right? Yeah. And I don't think the Falcons have really shown that consistently with Desmond Ridder and Arthur Smith these last couple of years. So I agree with you. I think making this a sort of ground and pound, we're just going to smash you in the mouth with the run game and beat you up front on defense. I think that's the formula for success for the Falcons this week.
Yeah, and and to add to that, when you look at, being behind the chains, because they didn't look good in third and long situations last week. That didn't look good. But when they stayed ahead of the chains and they got into 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4s, that opened up the playbook for Arthur Smith. And you can see some play action, and you can see, hey, the defense is kind of on his heels so much so they can't really pin their ears back. Because one thing about defensive lineman, man, I know, and I wasn't the best pass rusher at all, but when it was 3rd and 12, I knew what was coming. I lightened up in my stance a little bit, popped my butt up in the air a little bit, put my hand down on the ground. I was real light. I was like, hey, man, I'm trying to get off because I know what's coming. And when you have the defense in those 3rd and medium and 3rd and 4s and 3rd and short, they don't know. They don't know. More than likely, they don't know. They may be able to, from a film study standpoint, be able to see what, from a formation standpoint, okay, here's probably one of 6 plays that might be coming. But when you talking about, get into those situations, man, it is going to benefit the Falcons tremendously if they stay ahead of the chains, man, and get into those 3rd and 4th situations. That's when you're going to see that play action come into play. That's when you're going to see a Kyle Pitts being able to, get open and up underneath and hitting those seams like that. So I really feel like, if this is a ground and pound type game, I think that's going to work out in the Falcons' favor for sure.
I absolutely agree. And we'll touch a little bit more about that battle in the trenches. We'll talk a little bit more about the Falcons quarterback, get Jarvis's thoughts on if he feels Desmond Ridder can play a cleaner football game than he played in week 1. And we'll get into all of that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So, guys, buying tickets to your favorite sports events shouldn't be stressful, and Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports and music and comedy, theater, all that you want near you. And they have killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guaranteed so that you can stop stressing and start getting hyped for all the fun you're going to have. I love Gametime because you get the seat view from wherever you're potentially going to purchase your tickets. And it's easy to find those flash deals and last minute tickets on their platform, and those flash deals mean you don't have to plan too far in advance for your tickets. You can get tickets to football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, and more right up to the day of the event. And I know for me, heading to some Duke football home games here in North Carolina, I don't have to stress about trying to figure out which games ahead of time that I want to go to, and you'll always get the best price guaranteed. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 100%, 110% the difference. So snag tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first deposit, off your first purchase. I'm sorry. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So continuing here with Jarvis Davis of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family on ATL Day Ones. And, you touched already, Jarvis, on sort of, the Falcons didn't look good in third and long, right? Last week.
Right.
The Packers had no problem looking good against third and long. Granted, it was against the Bears defense that feels more like the 2022 Falcons defense than necessarily the 2023 Falcons defense. At least we're hoping.
7-on-7 is a safe way to put it.
Yeah.
It was like 7-on-7.
So,
Scale.
I don't know if week one is a true reflection of how the Packers are going to perform each and every week, but clearly they showed if you give them the opportunities, they will pick apart your defense, even if it's 3rd and 10 and 3rd and 12. But, Jarvis, let's talk a little bit about your concern with that 3rd and long situation for the Falcons. And we saw the Falcons offensive line get their butts kicked by 2 guys last week against Derek Brown and Brian Burns. And this week, it's not just 2 guys. It's going to be like 5 or 6 guys that can potentially kick your butt. And we saw the Falcons kind of make the adjustment in the second half, basically going more max protect and being able to double team guys like Burns and Brown. And Carolina didn't really have anybody else on that front that could really threaten you. But I don't think that's going to be the case with Green Bay if you decide to double team Rashawn Gary or Devontae White or Kenny Clark or any of those guys. They got some other guys. Lucas Van Ness and Kobe Wooden had a good game for a rookie. And Carl Brooks made some plays. And Preston Smith is the wily veteran, all that sort of stuff. So I'm curious, where for you is this battle in the trenches going to be won and lost? Is there one particular player that needs to step up, or do you need to see improvement from all 5 of the Falcons' offensive line starters?
I mean, let's start with the right side of the offensive lineman, right? Because that's where the money resides, right? Follow the money. When all else fails, follow the money. And the money is right there at that right guard spot. Start with Chris Lindstrom. He has to play a lot better than what he did last week. Caleb McGarry, he has to play a lot better than he did last week. And I think that, if you find yourself in a scenario where this offense started looking like a Marcus Mariota-led offense, that's when we know there are some issues. There are going to be some problems if we start seeing that, because at the end of the day, we need to see what, Desmond Ridder is. Like, I don't know what he is. I still don't know what he is, because he looked a little flustered last week, and rightfully so, because he had that heater was on his back, pretty consistently, specifically in the first half of the game. So I'm looking for a Chris Lindstrom, Caleb McGarry to play a lot better. I know we talked about, Jake Matthews on my show earlier, but I got to start where, like, that fresh money and that new money is on the right side. Jake Matthews, yeah, he got a nice little bump to, stick around and be that wily veteran, but I'm looking at the guys that, got that new money, Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry, because at the end of the day, I expect Chris Lindstrom to have a much better game than what he did. And to be honest with you, Caleb McGarry, he just needs to be more consistent, because, like, it can't be one opposite end of the spectrum from play to play, right? Like, find the middle ground. If we know that you're not the best of pass protector, right? We know that's not your game. We know you're pretty doggone solid at running the football. So I think that Arthur Smith is going to highlight that. But Caleb McGarry, though, he got to find a middle ground. You can't be out here looking like boo-boo the fool on one play, and then the next play, you're like, oh, he's like a solid starter in right tackle in the NFL. Like, it can't be like I need you to find that middle ground like ASAP. Like he's listening right now. Of course he is. He's listening to Locked On Falcons. Of course he's listening to Locked On Falcons.
Yeah.
Caleb, stop playing. I know you. I know what you're doing.
Yeah. I agree with you, Jarvis. And I think you bring up a good point. You sort of mentioned what the offense looked like with Marcus Mariota. And that was kind of the standout thing to be the offense last year at the beginning of in the first half of the season, and it's something I brought up a bunch on the podcast over the last, several months, where, we talk a lot about the limitations of the quarterback holding back the offense, but I actually think it was more the limitations of the offensive line. That Arthur Smith was basically calling an offense where he's like, I don't trust these guys to hold up in pass protection, so we're just going to run. It's all play action and running football. Like, we ain't doing nothing else.
However we can slow down that rush, we're gonna do it.
Yeah, they are firing out of their stands every single snap, rather than the defense being able to fire out of their stands. And I thought in the second half of the season, that was one of the reasons why it did become more of a Marcus Mariota issue in the second half, because you weren't as worried about the offensive line holding up, and he wasn't able to get the job done. And And, it was incredible in like the first game start of Desmond Ritter's career that they went empty. Like they never went empty under Marcus Mariota. They were like, no, we ain't going empty at all. And to have that confidence that they could do that, but based off of last week's show, and like, I don't know if you can be confident going empty, especially against this Packers front. And it's not as if it's going to get easier over the next, month or two. You got teams like the Titans and Washington, and Aiden Hutchinson looked pretty good in week 1. He's coming to town.
Will Anderson out there balling in Houston.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like, if talking about trying to figure out if Desmond Ridder can play a cleaner game, which I don't think he did in week 1, but you got to get more help from the offensive line. We can't have another half a season where Arthur Smith is basically having no confidence in his pass protection to hold up in order to get a good evaluation of this young quarterback. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, like I think Desmond Ridder is in a place where I feel like he wants to prove that, and to being a guy that really going into his first full season as a starter, it's kind of hard to kind of communicate to your offensive line like, hey man, I need y'all to give me some time. Like, I think that's probably like the next step for him, right? To kind of not necessarily like cuss the guys out, but what I'm saying, just be able to say, hey, you guys give me some time. Like, here's what we're going to be able to do. And I think that, that's a part of that growth, right, that we need to see from him. That from a leadership standpoint, we know that he has a good relationship or a good rapport with those guys. Yeah. In training camp, when you're not going to be hit, it's cool. It's easy to do that, right? But when you talking about you getting your butt put on the ground a few times and you just going back to the whole, all right, guys, let's go. Nah. Like at some point, you got to say, hey, man, I need y'all. Mm-hmm. I need y'all to protect for me, because it's there. I'm seeing Kyle Pitts open with his hands up in the air, or I'm seeing Drake London sitting right there on this 9 route. Like, I'm seeing the separation. So all you got to do is just give me a half a second or a second of time to be able to throw the football down the field. So, and I think that's once we start to see that progression, because I feel like those guys, this offensive line is capable, right? It was the third best run blocking offensive line in the league last year. Yeah, like build on that. Don't go backwards. You know what I'm saying? Don't regress, because they can't afford to, because we saw what that looked like, right? In that first half of the game, the offensive line regressed. So we can't go backwards, and if we want to see what Ridder is going to be able to do, because like we can't even ask the question, can he play cleaner, if the offensive line isn't doing what they need to do. So if with the combination of the offensive line playing much better than what they did last week, which I feel like they can do, and Ridder being, taking that necessary step to say, you know what, hey, here's what I'm seeing out here, guys. All you guys got to do is give me X, Y, Z, and we're gonna get in this end zone.
I agree. And Matthew Bergeron, we ain't talking about Matthew Bergeron. He's not the liability here.
No.
So it's like, hey, the guys making the money, y'all need to earn that check, right?
I hate to be in folks' pockets, but I'm just saying, like, Chris, I vouched for you when a lot of people were trying to get you up out of town, man. I was like, hey, man, the man can play some football. So, come on back, man. We need you.
Yeah.
We need you. Desmond needs you. More importantly.
So, that's going to do it, I guess, for our week 2 content on today's episode. We'll wrap up today's episode, get into some interesting conversations. A certain Falcons beat writer sparked an interesting debate about the color of the team's helmets, but we'll also talk a little bit about, some hypothetical trade talk. Should the Falcons be selling at this point with, players like Cordarrelle Patterson and Taylor Heinicke? There's been some talk about, maybe some people could be looking to trade for him, and we'll pick Jarvis's brain on that as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So this show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and sometimes you find yourself lying awake late at night with racing thoughts, can't fall asleep, and a great way to make those thoughts go away is to talk through them, and therapy gives you a place to do that. And you've heard me talk a lot over the last year about how therapy has benefited me, And that's thanks to BetterHelp. Therapy has helped me understand that I can control what I can control, and I can't control if the Falcons offensive line can protect Desmond Ridder, but I can control the quality of this podcast when I talk trash about that offensive line. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from you guys saying that the quality of this podcast has improved over the last year, and that's thanks to BetterHelp. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, I cannot recommend highly enough BetterHelp, giving them a try. It's entirely done online. It's much more affordable than traditional offline therapy. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And all you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and you'll get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp by visiting BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. And guys, we are talking about PrizePicks, who are back with the fun and quick way to play daily fantasy. It's simple. All you got to do is pick 2 or more players and pick more or less on their projected stats. And it's quick and easy. It takes less than a minute. I love doing it right before the Thursday night game. It's also, a fun way to enhance your fantasy play. And the great thing is you get your money back quick. And when you're making up to 25 times your money on your entry, hey, you'd love to have that type of cash in your pocket. And if you're looking to see what the Falcons do on PrizePicks, they got Bijan Robinson. We're talking about running the football. Hey, great opportunity for you guys. Go more or less on Bijan's projection of 64.5 yards. We'll get 65 or more. I think that's a great bet. So go more on that, or don't listen to me at all. Doesn't matter. But all you got to do is go to PrizePicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app, and go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, and you use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, or use promo code LockedOnNFL. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. This past week, I'm listening to other podcasts about what other teams are doing in week 1, because I'm so focused on the Falcons, and I'm listening to Locked On Packers host Peter Bukowski. He's talking about the Packers run game. He's talking about AJ Dillon kind of struggled in that week 1 game, and they're looking to maybe they be in the market for a running back. And I hear him name drop guys like Cordarrelle Patterson and Tyler Algier as possible trade options. I'm listening to Mina Kimes of ESPN on her podcast, and she's talking about the Jets quarterback situation now that Aaron Rodgers is out for the season with an Achilles injury. And she's name dropping Taylor Heinicke as a possible option for the Jets among several other quarterbacks that they could get that's better than Zach Wilson. So, Jarvis, I need to put your GM hat on. Okay. And, I already know you're going to hang up the phone if they call about Tyler Algier, so I'm not even going to ask you about that one.
I ain't picking that up. Hello.
But, hypothetically, if you're sitting in Terry Fontenot's office, y'all talking back and forth, and he gets a phone call.
Of course, yeah. Terry and I talk.
Yeah. And someone's calling about trading for a CP or Taylor Heinicke, are you willing to make that move?
That's a good question. Cordarrelle Patterson, I don't know if it would be worth it. You know what I'm saying? I know he brings value. Don't get me wrong, he brings value to this team, but I don't know what he will be worth to another team. Like, because are they talking a 3rd round pick? Like, I would at least have the conversation, because I would have to filled that one out, because I don't necessarily know what you'd be able to get back. And is that worth trading? Because like I said, the Falcons and Arthur Smith is still trying to figure out where he is offensively. Obviously, it's very early in the season, so I don't think that trading him right now would make sense, because like you said, you're still trying to figure out the whole Bijan, Tyler Algier situation, and then how are you going to use Cordarrelle Patterson when you haven't figured out how to use Drake and Kyle and Mac and Scotty? Scotty didn't even hardly play that much on the offensive side of the football that much in the first week. So I think the Falcons have too many moving parts. They don't really know their identity right now. So Cordarrelle Patterson, I'll probably fall back right now, and then even if I'm willing to, I don't know what can I really get in return for a 30-year-old running back / wide receiver / kick returner, like in today's today's game. So I'll probably ease up on Cordarrelle Patterson, but Taylor Heinicke though, it's depending on what's it worth to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, If Joe Douglas up there in New York want to ring my line, hit my line, like, yeah, man, let's have a conversation. What we're talking about right here? Because Taylor Heinicke, he can slang it a little bit, But I really feel like that'll probably be the one that I would at least broach the subject. I'll pick up the phone. I'll give me a nice cup of coffee. We can have a nice discussion as to what I would like in return for Taylor Heinicke. I believe that's some value to other teams with him. If you're in a pinch from a quarterback situation, I think the Jets are they're probably the team that are just itching to try to see, hey, at least what's out there or what they'd be willing to give up. So, yeah, I would definitely lean towards Taylor Heinicke versus Cordarrelle Patterson because, I'm all about what I can get in return, that value and what he brings to the team versus what I can get in return. And I think Cordarrelle Patterson probably gives me a little bit more value by sticking around versus me trying to trade him off.
Yeah, okay. I'm of a similar mind. It feels pretty early to be trading players at this point.
Yeah,
but
man.
it stood out to me. I'm like, people actually want Falcons players? Like, this is a new
imagine that concept. Like, the fact that we're even having this conversation is growth, man. Yeah. That's what it's all about. Because most of the time when Falcons players get cut, man, they're out the league. They're going to go find a job. They trying to find a way to invest their money so they can flip it so they ain't got to really work no more. So, yeah, it's just a lot going on, man, when Falcons players leave here, man. So, yeah, the fact that, like you mentioned, I think that's a great point. The fact that people are having conversations about wanting to trade for Falcons players one weekend, man, that means a lot. Ross has talent. Yes.
Yeah. So my last question for you, Jarvis, is in honor of our good friend D-Led, who begun the great discourse that has this fan base in a tizzy. And so I asked the question: are the red helmets overrated?
Absolutely not. What? The red helmets, the black and red helmets with the red as the primary color? That's what we're talking about? No, they're not overrated. Actually, they need to be the main helmets, in my humble opinion. You know what I mean? Like the second most humble host in this industry. Yeah, like I don't understand what D is about when it comes to that stuff, man. Because, I feel like, D, my boy, we cool and everything. So I feel like I can say this, confidently. It's just you and I talking, ain't nobody out here listening, watching.
Nobody's
You know what I'm saying? Like, ain't nobody out here checking us out. I think D be trolling the fans, man. Like, I think he be doing this junk on purpose. Because, like, who says the red and black helmets are overrated? Like, who says that? Who says that? Like, maybe somebody who's a big fan of purple and gold for a lot of reasons. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, but, like, are you going to do that to, like, your readership? Like, that's why I wholeheartedly feel like deep down, D probably was sat to himself and said, you know what? Let me see. What can I say? They can get the folks fired up before this game on Sunday. Like, I know, offensive line need to block. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine. We get it. Desmond Ridder didn't play well. Yeah, that's all good. That's ain't no big deal. I'm talking about social media though. Black and red helmets. They're overrated. As a matter of fact, they need to stop wearing them. Yes, that's it. So, yeah, like, I think D-Led is wholeheartedly trolling Falcons fans. So, y'all just leave D alone, man. Y'all know what he's trying to do. So, like, we talked about, BetterHelp and, like, focusing in on things you can control. You can't control D. D gonna say what he gonna say. So, wait a minute. Did I just say what I thought I just said?
What I'll say, Jarvis, is this. I think D-Led is either the most aware man on the planet because he knows exactly what he's doing, or he's the most unaware man on the planet because he doesn't know exactly what he's doing. So either way, I love it. I love it. Either way, he's at one extreme.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
he's the Caleb McGarry, right? He's either the best run blocker in the league or the worst pass protector in the league. He's somewhere
from West Bumble, Washington State. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't know nothing about culture or nothing. I'm just out here playing ball, man. Like, I'm going back to my farm in the off season. You know what I mean? Like, what y'all doing?
Yeah. So I love it. clearly the people have spoken.
Yes.
I put out a Twitter poll saying, are the red helmets
What are the
overrated?
results, by the way?
90% said no, they're not overrated. So there's 10% that do think they are overrated, that agree with D-Led, but that's just a sliver of the fan base. So
Just a little bit, small percentage.
the people have spoken, and so have we. And Jarvis, always appreciate you joining me. We will see each other again on Sunday, immediately after the game. Hopefully we'll be joined by
402.
the lovely Tanitra Batiste on that postcast. So we'll see how that goes. She's a busy woman, so we'll see how it goes. But guys, that is going to do it for us here on this illustrious podcast. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll be back with more on Sunday.